Welcome to another edition of the Everyday Sens podcast and a members pod. We're going to answer a little Q&A today here, Brennan. I think we've done this before, but it's not necessarily a prompt for everyone. It's just Q&A about the off season, the Sens, and just everything that everyone wants to know who is subscribed to everydaysens.com. So let's get it going here. Let's just not waste any time and get into all the questions because I'm sure we'll touch the hour again. We're kind of starting a theme where we just go as long as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we got a lot of questions. I think we've got 7 lined up for today. And there was a lot of engagement again in the prompts. So yeah, if you're not if you are a member and you're not on the private Instagram story, if you don't have Instagram or something, if you'd like to be added and you make one, you can definitely reach out. Yeah, we want to get as many people as possible, but yeah, we've got a lot of questions. So we'll dive right in here with our first one from @TrevorMcNeil12. And that's, with Mark Stone winning the Stanley Cup, who is your favorite Sens alumni to win the cup? And then we're gonna spin this into a little something else too. But Jack, I'm gonna let you go first.
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, he's got to be up there, right? I think I personally I think because he's the captain, so it's obviously so public that like I think in most cases being the captain of another team doesn't really mean a ton until you win the cup because you're the guy. That's the shot everyone remembers of the Bettman handing over the cup. So this is the first one obviously that comes to mind. I can't think of another big one that won it. That was a huge part of the Sens history. Like I like Alfie didn't win one anywhere else. Spezza didn't. Heatley didn't. I can't really think of anyone. Do you have anyone on the top of your mind?
Just looking up the list here because I know, yeah. So he actually listed a couple. He listed like Vermette, and there was a couple others, but I think the ones that I really like are Zdeno Chara and Chris Kelly was on the Boston team. Both of them were on there.
Yeah,
Both
Chris
really
Kelly.
good guys. Yeah.
I forgot Zdeno Chara. Yeah, that's brutal.
It's
That's
hard
tough.
though because Boston is a division rival, so I know we're just talking about Sens alumni, but I don't think a lot of Sens fans like to watch Boston win the cup. Like that was sort of not a happy moment, but at the same time, like it's more about guys who didn't leave on a bad note, right? Like Chara, obviously, kind of the Sens picked Redden over him, and that's just like that's not on Chara. But he's obviously like turned into an elite captain and someone who, regardless of what the Sens decided to do, someone who you can really respect in Ottawa and what he did for us. And then Chris Kelly obviously too came back in I think a coaching role for Ottawa too, and he actually came back in that 2017 playoff run, which is like a really weird note. Is Chris Kelly I think was like the 13th forward for that whole run, which is awfully bizarre. But yeah, I think those two are my favorite just based on not Boston but themselves.
Chara's a good one. I can't believe I blanked on that. And I was thinking, it was so far removed from him leaving in free agency, but I'm thinking back, it wasn't really. He left in the summer of '06, I believe, and then won the cup in 2011 as the captain of the Bruins. Mark Stone was traded in 2019 and won the cup as the captain of the Golden Knights in 2023. 4 years, 5 years, same thing. Like that's actually there's a lot of parallels there with Chara and Stone. So yeah, it's got to be those two for me. I mean, Chris Kelly for sure and Vermette. But when it's guys like Chara and Stone, I still would pick Stone. I don't know. I don't want to say my favorite Sens alumni to win the cup because it hurts at the same time, right? It's probably more bittersweet seeing Stone do it. Just like you mentioned, like Chara was forced out of town, and it wasn't because the Sens hated him or whatever. They just had to move on from him. They couldn't afford him really, with the cap and everything. But with Stone, it's different. Like they shoved him out the door essentially, and that one hurts a little bit more, and especially because he wanted to stay here, and it's more recent, I guess. But those are definitely the two guys, no doubt.
Yeah, I think Stone would actually be my number one just because, like, again, we're younger guys. I don't particularly remember the Chara days overly well. I was like 5 when he left. Um, but Stone was one of my favorite players as well. I mean, I remember back before we traded him, I had like graphics made about, well, just sign him 8x8 or whatever and make him the captain, like just get it done. And I still would have been fine with that, but yeah, going on to win, I mean, it's hard to be bitter about a guy winning the cup when they leave Ottawa. I mean, if the Sens traded them away and it really wasn't any hard feelings, and now that we've kind of learned about Stone too, that Dorian wanted to offer him a bigger contract and it kind of got negated there by ownership. But, it's hard to be bitter with Stone. And you can see too, like Brady Tkachuk is still going to be part of his, like he's one of his groomsmen or whatever, and he's going to be like, they're very close friends. And so he's obviously happy for him as well. He's going to be around the cup. So it is good to see some other guys that have won the cup too, some alumni. So Marian Hossa, Dominic Hasek, Ray Emery, Steve Duchesne, or am I even, yeah, and then Antoine Vermette as well. And then there's a few more depth guys, but they're not going to be our age of people. But yeah, those are some other ones. I guess Emery would be a good one too. That's a nice one just based on him passing, obviously, in that tragic sort of situation. But yeah, do you have anything else on those alumni?
Yeah, well, this is a perfect spin. We were planning on this because I asked before we started, like, hey, are there any questions where we can spin it into the NHL awards? Because those obviously just happened. We're recording this Tuesday. They happened last night. Erik Karlsson just won his third Norris Trophy, becoming the ninth defenseman, I think, of all time to win more than two. No defenseman who has won two Norris Trophies isn't in the Hall of Fame. So except for Duncan Keith, who will be in, he just retired. So like it's just adding to his legacy. I think he was a shoe in for the Hall of Fame anyway, but he's going to get in now. And it just kind of like the awards in general, like I've got people. I was mad last night. I was mad about the voting for Jake Sanderson. He ends up getting all rookie team, which is great and like a great honor and recognition for him. Joins Josh Norris and Brady Tkachuk as current Sens to be on the all rookie team, but Shane Pinto had 20 goals as a rookie and didn't even get a top 15 vote or a top yeah, there we go. Top 13 vote. And I don't know, it just I personally don't put a lot of stock into awards. Like it's when I see voting breakdown like this, and it's frustrating as a Sens fan when, like I'm not saying Jake Sanderson had a better season than Owen Power. We've been over this for sure on some episodes earlier, but it wasn't the gap. It wasn't that big of a gap. Like it was not what's that a 729 point gap between the two of them in terms of voting. I just think that's ridiculous. So it puts in perspective, like at the end of careers and stuff with Alfredson, it's a great, that whole debate about him going into the Hall of Fame. It was, oh, he's only got the Calder Trophy. It's like the voting is so subjective, and it's the McDavid thing is perfect proof of that. He should have been a unanimous MVP again, but he got one fifth place vote, and that's it. And like everything else was first place, and it's just one person being like, you know what? I think he was the fifth best player. Like that's not serious. So I don't know. It's just frustrating because it's there's a lot of people who do take it seriously, and all. Murray Pam for the Full Press NHL, he was very transparent about his picks and everything, and I love that because it comes out anyway. So I don't know why these writers wouldn't be more open about it. It's just yeah. So it's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's a good reminder that like we can talk about individual awards all we want and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's an opinion. And Pierre-Olivier Joseph was not a better rookie this year than Shane Pinto. Like I'm sorry, like that's just not true.
That so Shane Pinto got 0 votes for anything on here. That's like actually insane.
Didn't get one.
I know I was very focused on Sanderson, but Pinto getting not one vote, even in fifth place with a 20 goal scorer, that's completely like ludicrous. Holy.
So someone said like there's a lot of rookies, right? And a lot of people are deserving. Jack Quinn had a great year, like probably deserving of more than just 3 fifth place votes. Like the thing is, it's tough when you only get to vote for a top 5, I guess, right? And someone pointed out, I don't remember who, but I tweeted out that Pinto had 20 goals. He was 4th in rookie goal scoring and didn't get a top 5 vote. Someone pointed out though too that he was 9th in scoring overall, which that puts it in a different perspective. But I don't know. I mean, I think goals are valued a lot more than points in general. And I know I think Beniers had 24 goals and Pinto had 20. Like, yeah, Beniers had a ton of points, but he was on Seattle, who was a deep team. And like, I'm not taking away from Matty Beniers, but it's more just when there's goalies involved too, that frustrates me a little bit. Yeah, like it's look, people saying it doesn't matter and it doesn't like impact the players. They don't care. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. Shane Pinto needs a new contract. Do you think if he was up there in the Calder voting, it would kind of help his case a little bit to get more than, what did I give him yesterday? 1.75, 1.5 million? Like, of course, if he's up in the Calder voting, he'll push for more money. Like, it matters. And a lot of, actually, some players have incentives in their contracts probably where they get bonuses if they're top 3 in voting or whatever the hell. So, yeah, it's frustrating. And it's, as a Sens fan, it just points to we don't get enough recognition. The Sens had 6 20 goal scorers this season. The next closest team had 5. Buffalo had 5. no one had 620 goal scorers. Pinto was the 620th goal scorer. I don't think that not receiving a vote for the rookie of the year is kind of indicative of the season he had.
Well, I also think it has to be noted the situation they played in. Like, not that, I mean, Pinto got more opportunity, but I have to, like, Josh Norris got hurt. So Pinto originally was expected, he came into camp expecting to play on the third line in a more sheltered situation, and then he was kind of forced into this greater role on the second line where they needed him to produce and they needed him to step up in Norris's absence, which are big shoes to fill, right? Like, that's not an easy thing to do. He was playing with very talented players, which I'm sure people would argue was a benefit, but I also think it was a bit of, like, it was holding him back a little bit because he was in this role that wasn't as comfortable for him. Like, I think he would have had an even better season if he was on the third line. Not, maybe he wouldn't have scored 20 goals, but I think he wouldn't have been, if you look at his defensive numbers, they weren't great. And I think that was partly because he was subjected to a greater role than he really was supposed to be. But yeah, I just had the stats pulled up. He was 8th in scoring overall with 35 points, and then 4th in goal scoring with 20. And it was, Beniers at 24. And then there was Wyatt Johnson had 24, Kyril Marchenko had 21, and then Pinto had 20. And then it was down to McTavish at 17, and everyone else was below that. So, like, that's pretty impressive. And I mean, I think Pinto, too, he scored a lot of 5v5 goals, if I'm not mistaken. I think he scored more than DeBrincat, actually. He might have scored, 14 or something. So, it is bizarre to me that not one person would put him 5th. I'm even surprised Jack Quinn didn't get more votes, to be honest with you. But I guess, like you said, they are only voting for a top 5. So, you look at some of the names at the top, and it's kind of understandable. But still, when you see Pierre-Olivier Joseph on 13th, that's kind of crazy. And we just had the list pulled up here on YouTube for anybody listening on audio. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it is good that Sanderson made the all-rookie team at least. And on Sanderson, too, he did not receive any first-place votes. He got 6 second-place votes, and then from there, it just kind of grew. But yeah, that even that is a little surprising. And like you said, 729 points behind Power in voting. And yeah, Murray Pam came out and said I think he had him above Sanderson. Or above Power. Sorry, that's what he was saying. Yeah, and he referenced hard minutes, and it's just the role. I don't think that these voters look at the role enough. They look too much at just the raw statistics. Like, Sanderson played 200 or 150 more minutes than Power on the penalty kill, and he was facing better competition.
Sanderson led the team in shorthanded minutes on a top 10 penalty kill team in the league as a rookie. He was, what do you have, 12 penalty minutes, maybe 6 minor penalties, whatever you want to call it, on the worst penalized team in the NHL, or the second worst penalized team in the NHL. No recognition for any of that. It's not that big of a deal. Obviously, it's not, they weren't going to win. It's not about Sanderson. I think he should have won the Rookie of the Year. I don't. I genuinely think Beniers deserved it. But it's about the organization of the ballot. I don't understand how you can legitimately have Owen Power on a top 5 ballot and not include Jake Sanderson. If you're torn between one or the other, don't put either of them on. That's how I see it. You can't, they were that equal. It was literally that close. We went down and broke it all down. There was no separation. So I think this gap is kind of ridiculous. That's what bothers me. And obviously Pinto not being on there at all just kind of speaks to that. I know who voted for Pierre-Olivier Joseph for 5th place. It was Dom Lechuzin, I want to say. I think he had him in his top 5. I know he had him on the rookie team ahead of Sanderson, which, again, come on, man. It's just, analytics are great, and I know you're more into the analytics than I am, but if they're skewed, it's a hard job to keep tabs on all 32 teams in every game every night. I understand that. But at the end of the day, you have to just watch a highlight pack, for God's sake. It's not that hard to kind of see the impact a player might have had. We're kind of going nuts here with the awards, but we had to talk about it. It was I was pretty heated last night watching and it's not even just Sens stuff. The MVP stuff got me going too. Someone just threw away a vote for McDavid. Did you know, he would have been the only 2-time unanimous MVP. 1982 it happened with Gretzky, and then 2021 McDavid got it. It would have been history, and someone just threw away a vote.
That makes no sense. Who's voting here? Maybe we should have a look at that.
Well, that's the thing, and again, I'm not shitting on local writers who get a vote for it, because people like Murray Pam, who goes out of his way to be transparent about it, take it seriously. But it's obvious, it's so obvious that person was probably a Bruins beat writer who, and look, it's fine if you have Pasternak over him and put McDavid 2nd, but putting McDavid 5th, knowing that you're probably going to be the only person who does that, it's obvious that you're just trying to throw it away. and not care. And that bothers me more, probably more than it should, but I don't care. Like it does. And it's pretty ridiculous.
It is, and I was just looking at Sanderson again, and the funny thing about him is that his analytics were actually pretty good too. It's not like he had bad analytics or anything. Like he had pretty good numbers in every way. But yeah, again, I just think that they have to look more at the role too. Sanderson was playing like not just penalty killing hard minutes, but he was playing hard 5v5 minutes as well. He was also playing with Travis Hamonic for most of the season, which I know we all love Hammer and the things he does and the way he's talked about Sanderson, but I'm sorry, like Sanderson's numbers for most of the season, especially at the beginning, like the first half, really shot up away from Hamonic, and I always felt that they should have been separated. But yeah, again, we've talked about that a little bit, so we'll move on from this point. And again, good question by Trevor McNeil, which ignited us into the NHL awards because they were last night. And then you know what, like there's one question about DeBrincat. I know we've talked a lot about him, but we'll get that one going, and because the draft is tomorrow, so we are recording on Tuesday the 27th. The draft is 32 hours from now, and Ottawa currently does not own a first round pick, but I mean by 7 o'clock tomorrow they very well could with DeBrincat. So from @guard93, we've got the best return for DeBrincat in a trade. Now I took this as a couple ways because he also added that like for him he thinks it would be UC Saros, and so we can kind of answer it two ways. What do you think is like an ideal return for Ottawa? It has to be realistic, obviously, but what do you think? Like, would a goaltender be the best return? Would another top six forward be the best return? Or maybe like, what do you think the most realistic package is of actual players based on what we've talked about? Maybe. So whatever you want to talk about with that, go for it.
To me, I mean, obviously Soros is the dream. He would be the best player in the deal, and I think that's the only person who's even slightly rumored in any DeBrincat trade that would be the best player in that deal. I think to me it's got to be best case scenario for a DeBrincat trade is a middle six piece and a goalie, like a goalie who can step in and be a 1A 1B. So I know that when yesterday the Bruins traded Taylor Hall to free up cap space, some people just kind of mentioned, hey, maybe the Bruins can take DeBrincat. Like that'd be something that they'd probably be interested in. Would you do like a Swayman and DeBrusk for DeBrincat? I'd be all over that, to be honest. Like that kind of fits exactly what they need and exactly what I'm looking for in that deal. And I don't care about futures. That's why I haven't really cared about this draft. I don't like. I think in the Sens' head they used it as a deadline just because other dominoes would fall and maybe they could get an asset and like it'd be ideal to get into the first round, but priority should be to bolster the roster for next season, which would mean not drafting tomorrow in the first round. So yeah, ideal trade for me is a goalie and a middle six forward, and I understand that that's not going to grow on a tree. That's tough to do, especially if you go for UC Saros because that's probably all you're going to get in that deal. But hey, man. Nashville's hosting the draft, and they're probably going to want to make a splash. So you can maybe put the pressure on new GM Barry Trotz. I don't know. That'd be my ideal thing. I think we're both in the same boat, though.
Yeah, UC Stars would be the best return. Like just on the question, it would be the best return. Just because I think I actually just pulled it up. He's finished fourth in Vezina voting this year, and I honestly think he could be the best goalie in the league, and no one would bat an eye like if he wins that in the near future. He's just so good, and he's small, but like he's very, very good. UC Saros, one of my like favorite netminders in the league. I'd love to acquire him. I'd happily give DeBrincat and more to get him. In fact, I don't even think it would be a swap. I think Ottawa would have to add to DeBrincat, which is pretty telling of how good Saros is. I still am not seeing it as realistic as other people. I just don't like if Nashville is acquiring DeBrincat, that means that they don't want to rebuild. That means that they want to compete, right? Like, I mean, DeBrincat's still young, but his best years are going to be over the next few years. So if you're Nashville and you acquire him, and you spoke to this yesterday about how maybe Nashville doesn't make as much sense based on what they're trying to do, but I think they could make sense. It's just, if they're acquiring DeBrincat to compete, why would they trade their top 5 goaltender away? Like, I know they have Askarov coming, but he's not ready yet. So, and like, there's no guarantee he's still a prospect. It would almost make more sense to trade Askarov in my mind, but I don't think they're going to do that. I just don't know why you would trade Saros if you're trying to compete with DeBrincat. Either way, though, I do think Nashville has good assets. Like, I know I had the Tomasino trade in yesterday's mock-off season, but they've got good prospects. Like, they've also got Luke Evangelista. They've got Joachim Kamel. Like, they've got guys who could actually benefit Ottawa and play now, too. Like, that's what I like is, and in my ideal package, if it's not going to be a one-for-one Saros swap, is I would like to get a middle six player, like you said, and ideally they'd be cost effective and could play on the second line. The guy I look at for that, Dominic Kubalik from Detroit, that's one of my favorite potential acquisitions just because I think, for one, he's that middle six guy who could play on the second line, but he also hurts Detroit by taking him. If we're trading with Detroit, and this has generated a lot of steam over the last couple of days, Detroit and DeBrincat, if they're trading with Detroit, they better take at least one or two roster pieces because I do not want to leave them with a totally intact roster plus DeBrincat. I want Berggren and I want Kubalik. Like, that's what I'm going for. And even that with a first round pick, I'd be pretty happy with, even though it's Detroit. Yeah, it's just about getting like a top kind of young player with a high ceiling and then a middle six player and hopefully a pick. The only other thing about the 2023 draft deadline is that I think these picks, like first round picks, have a ton of value if they're this year. Like if you get a first round pick today for DeBrincat for tomorrow's draft, that has a lot of value on the market for a guy like we talked about yesterday with Konechny, or if you like with the Rangers or whoever might want that first round pick. So for me, Saros, one other mock trade I did have that I think would be similarly exciting in a 1-for-1 swap, and this was in the article that you guys read not too long ago, but is to Florida for Sam Reinhart. And that's kind of I don't know if it would work, but cap-wise, I mean, they're similar players, but like Reinhardt's a more complete player. DeBrincat's more of a finisher. Not this year, but in general, cap-wise, it would kind of work for both teams just because Reinhardt's going to be due for a contract, and Florida might not want to give it to him at his age, and they've got a lot of stuff coming up. I'd be happy with it with Ottawa, but again, don't really see it happening. I think Saros is more like linked, and Garriock, in fairness, has actually talked about Saros as well as a potential fit, and executives around the league think he might be available, maybe if the right deal comes around. Off the top of your head, what would you give up for Saros? Like, would you give up DeBrincat plus like a pick or like a prospect or a player?
So you got me thinking. So I was listening, or not listening, I just saw on Twitter David Pagnotta from the fourth period. He had a little hit just and talked about the Sens being like, and Detroit. The Red Wings have pick 9 and 17, and David said, I don't think 17 gets it done. I think 9 would. So here's my proposal here. You trade DeBrincat to Detroit for 9th overall and maybe a young or a middle, like a Berggren or whatever. If Detroit does that, I don't know. Then you flip 9th and plus something else, maybe the same player, to Nashville for Saros. Like I think if Nashville's going full teardown, that would be perfect. It gets them into the top 10 of the draft they're hosting. They add another first round pick to make it 3 on Wednesday night. Like it really does just depend on their direction. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're going full rebuild, but I mean, it kind of seems like they are. They traded Tanner Jeannot. They got rid of Ekholm, like all these guys for a lot of draft picks. And I would imagine that indicates at least short term. And listen, Saros, I think, has 2 years left and he's 28 years old. So kind of prime candidate to move out now if you're not trying to win next season. That's just the way I see it. And look, it sounds good on paper. You got to have 2 dance partners for that to happen, and Steve Yzerman and Barry Trotz for Pierre Dorion there. That would be a tough deal to negotiate. But yeah, like I don't expect, if the Sens can get it done in time, if they're going to trade DeBrincat to Detroit, I don't expect them to be drafting at the pick that they trade, or the pick that they trade for, I should say. I think that would be a prime piece to be moved. So if the Sens are up at 9th overall, honestly though, if that's how it came out in the wash, it'd basically be DeBrincat for Saros 1-for-1. You just have to use a third party, basically a 3-team trade. I'd be all over that. I think I would. I think that'd be perfect for the Sens.
We've seen some pretty enticing 3-team trades here, like mock trades. I will ask you, so I tweeted this last night, and this is a mock, and I've seen it proposed by Detroit fans. Other Detroit fans said they wouldn't do it, but it was their 17th pick this year, Boston's first round pick next year, and Philip Zadina for DeBrincat signed long term. What would you do that or not? Because there's been a lot of debate over this one.
So 9th, 17th,
Bruin 17th this year, and then Boston's first next year, and then Zadina.
No, not really. What's that? What good is that right now? You could maybe flip that Boston one for something in the summer, but that doesn't do anything. That just takes away from the roster today. Zadina is not better than.
He hasn't shown anything yet. And he's
he's not a shoe in for their third line kind of thing, right? That's You need someone who you can pencil in there and who can push for that second line spot, let alone the third line. I don't want. And I think people called Lafreniere like a reclamation project a little bit. I don't see that at all. Like
He's been a 40-point scorer at least, and he's still only what, 21? Like
yeah. Like he's had okay numbers for the role he was playing, and I think I also saw some people saying that he's had every opportunity in New York to jump up. No, he hasn't. Artemi Panarin and Chris Kreider have been locked in on those first and second line left wing positions. Then they went out and traded for Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane at the deadline, pushing them even further down the totem pole. Like I don't see how that's anyway. Yeah, no, I would if Zadina is the name coming back, I would not be happy. I'll put it that way. I will be underwhelmed, especially if you're trading him to Detroit. Like like you mentioned, you need to take away from their roster if you're giving them a DeBrincat, especially if they're in your division. Like I would just steer so far away from that if I'm Dorion. If they're if Yzerman's balking at some stuff.
Yeah, and I mean the idea of 2 first-round picks is pretty enticing just because I think you like that's a lot of value to potentially flip. Like I know I'm gonna bring Konechny up again. Somebody said, I think it might have even been Gary Ocker, or somebody said that no, it was from Daily Faceoff, Matt Larkin. He was doing mock trade sort of, and he brought up Konechny and the Sens and how they'd be a fit. And he said it's hard because they don't have a pick this year, and that obviously has the most value, whereas other teams do. But still, like when the draft comes and goes, if you've got 2 first round picks next year, like he said they'd have to base a package around their first round pick next year. So now if you've got 2, like that gives you a lot of options on the trade market. But at the same time, I still think it's so much easier said than done acquiring big name players like that. I know Ottawa's actually been doing well of late with that, with DeBrincat and Chychrun in the trade market. But it is easier said than done to like acquire. Like if they made that trade and they had Boston's first next year, it'd be really easy to say, well, they're just going to go and flip it. And then by the time the season rolls around, they just haven't found a partner to actually do that. Like you can't just force a trade, right? Either way though, yeah, I think we'll be pretty content with the assets they get, but I am nervous, and especially because this Detroit thing is picking up steam. I was hoping it would kind of fade off and just we'd forget about the Detroit as a partner, because Steve Yzerman is just terrifying. I know Elliot Friedman yesterday made the big wave by saying he still thinks that that's going to happen to bring it to Detroit. I'm still sitting here, like we just said, and I haven't even seen it talked about much, but you have to take from the roster. That's my key, is if we're giving them to DeBrincat, I want Kubalik back and I want Berggren back, because I am not just going to let Detroit stack up so they can beat us out in the first round of the playoffs when we finally make it there. Like, they're a team we're going to be playing against. We're probably going to have series against them in the playoffs for the next few years. So if you're trading them to DeBrincat, Pierre, like, you've got to get a haul and you've got to get a big return, and you've got to just take it to town on Stevie Y, because he's not going to, like, the way Friedman put it, when you're trading with Yzerman, he sets the rules. Like, he basically says, listen, we're going to get this, or we're going to do it this way, or I'm done. I'm walking away. And I'm like, just let him walk. Like, we'll find a different partner here. Come on.
And I've got faith in Dorion in terms of trade talks. Like you mentioned, like the DeBrincat, the last DeBrincat one, and then the Chychrun deal. Like he was patient with the Chychrun deal, and it's working. I mean, hasn't worked out yet, but it hasn't had the chance to. Like it was a good trade. Both of them were steals at the time, right? You didn't have to take away anything from your roster. It was really well done. So I would imagine, especially with Yzerman, like it's not, we don't know the details, but assuming Yzerman's the one calling Dorion about DeBrincat, like I doubt that Dorion's calling Detroit being like, hey, we have this guy who wants to come play for you. Like he's got so many other suitors and other options that they're going to be calling him. Like that should be how it works when you've got a player that people are coveting. All right, let's move on from DeBrincat again. And let's get on to our next questions here.
All right, we can shift gears. Well, we could stick on the same gear, sort of, not to DeBrincat, but just because today is the 27th, we're going to do Should Ottawa Acquire Draft Capital? If you enjoyed the first half of this podcast, you can listen to the second half with a subscription to everydaysens.com. You'll gain access to a private link in which you can watch on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Your subscription not only grants access to additional podcasts, articles, wallpapers, and more, but it supports Everyday Sens in covering the team. Jack and I put countless hours into producing quality, unique content for fans of the Senators, and it just wouldn't be feasible without your support. So not only for the premium content, but also for the free content, we really do appreciate every single one of our subscribers. If you've been considering it, we highly recommend it, and that's where you're going to be able to watch the second half of this episode and every other members-only podcast. So thank you for listening, and go subscribe.